The TurboGrafx Mini is our favorite mini plug-and-play console. If you've ever watched our channel before, then you probably already know that, because we've covered the thing fairly extensively here. Of all the games included on the TurboGrafx Mini, either in Japanese or English, one of our absolute favorites has turned out to be none other than JJ and Jeff, an Adventure Island-like side-scrolling platformer from early 1990. However, what's funny about this game is that it's been singled out by a lot of other reviewers of the TurboGrafx Mini as being a bad game, especially IGN for some reason.
All the way down to games like JJ and Jeff, a terrible side-scrolling garbage dump of a game which I played for the purposes of this review and will never, ever again boot up.
In 2007, when the game debuted on the Wii Virtual Console, IGN also had this to say. This is a case of a poor, boring game with one redeeming aspect being translated, altered, and then watered down into an even poorer, more boring game with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Kato and Ken was a vanilla platformer in Japan, but at least it had its humor and tie-in to a TV show, but stripped of that association, which results in an even more vanilla, humorless game that just don't make any sense at all and certainly isn't any funny. Stay away from JJ and Jeff. If you're looking for a TurboGrafx platformer, then there's better options for you to consider. Plus, if you're looking for fart jokes and potty humor, South Park reruns are readily available for free. Wow, IGN really doesn't like this game. But what's not to love? JJ and Jeff is a classic fast-paced side-scrolling platformer. And while the game is probably intended as a kind of parody of the Adventure Island series, since it was developed by Hudson Soft, it also has a little bit of a Mario Brothers feel, with a heavy emphasis on jumping on top of everything. Though you can also shoot an upgradable projectile, and you have a goofy little kick that turns out to be pivotal to gameplay. I think if anything is going to stop people from enjoying this quirky game, then it's probably a combination of its extremely weird aesthetic choices and apparent crypticness. But once you realize that you're supposed to stomp and kick stuff all over the place in order to progress, the crypticness turns out to be easily overcome and even a lot of fun. Every level comes with hidden doors that you can kick open, and depending upon whether or not you choose to play as JJ or Jeff, you'll encounter your partner in a strange costume, who then tells you something even stranger. Try kicking above the stump, chump. He's an angel. Is he dead? Why is he dead? Is it game over? What's going on? It's really nothing much. It's just supposed to be a clue. Later in the level, you seem stuck, and you have to literally kick above a tree stump in order to trigger the platform to the next level. I also got a health boost, but I'm not at all sure why he's dressed as an angel. Kicking around the levels, you'll find various hidden items, including gold coins. Sometimes you'll kick down a door and you'll find a slot machine that lets you gamble your coins for life, extra lives, or power-ups. Sometimes kicking around reveals hidden areas, like this fire hydrant in level 1. As with most early platformers, the goal of the game is simply to move your character to the right and survive all of the obstacles until you reach the end of the course. Complicating this, however, is the fact that just like the Adventure Island games, you have to constantly keep eating food in order to replenish your health bar, because it's gradually decreasing over time until you're dead. Some enemies or obstacles are best dealt with using a spray can to the face, but I found that I get the most enjoyment from stringing a series of bouncing jump attacks. The occasional boss fight, on the other hand, which are all sadly pretty much identical, are best dealt with using the same frantic kicking mechanic that you need to use to knock open the game's many hidden secrets. Graphically, the game isn't super impressive, but in 1990 I think these massive and detailed sprites would have turned some heads. The level designs are functional and crisp, but also somewhat vanilla. The style and assets from levels are recycled and color swapped, making the game's relatively lengthy 32 levels a bit redundant. Once more, adding to that redundancy is the fact that all of the game's boss fights, including the final boss fight, are all pretty much the exact same encounter. At the same time, the music in this game is infectious. I love it. It sounds a lot like something out of a Japanese TV show. In fact, and I'm about to, blow your mind, but this game is actually totally based on a Japanese TV show. Okay, so you probably already know that JJ and Jeff is just a westernized sprite swap version of a 1987 PC Engine game called Kato-chan and Ken-chan, which in turn was based on a long-running and popular Japanese sketch comedy show called Kato-chan Ken-chan Goki Gen TV. If you want to know more about the fascinating history of that classic Japanese show and how it was eventually translated and then retranslated into this game, then you definitely need to check out GTV Japan's outstanding video on this topic. It's really informative, and seriously, everything that guy does is amazing, so I recommend it highly. The link will be in the description. Suffice it to say that all of this game's weirdness is easily explained away when you realize that it's based upon a sketch comedy routine about detectives that originally aired on Japanese TV over 30 years ago. Imagine Japanese people trying to make sense of the Coneheads movie with Dan Aykroyd, a movie based on a sketch comedy bit from an old American TV show. Indeed, how did anyone make sense of the Coneheads? Ever? JJ and Jeff, coming out around about the same time as Super Mario 3, was certainly not going to win Game of the Year. However, it remains a thoroughly playable and fun little game full of fast-paced platforming action. Despite having a few cryptic moments, it remains easy to pick up and play, and it's a game that we frequently turn to whenever we just want to spend a few minutes messing around with our TurboGrafx-16 Mini. No matter how poorly we do, we always have a good time challenging ourselves to get further as we relish the game's many strange and sometimes funny moments. So with all due respect to IGN, I really think those guys are really wrong here. This is not a bad or even a mediocre game. If I was to put a score to this game, given how much fun we've had with it, then I'd have to say it was like a 4 out of 5, which is to be expected from a company like Hudson Soft, who back in the day was every bit as good as companies like Konami or Capcom or Sega or Nintendo. They represent the best of retro gaming, and while this isn't necessarily the best game ever released for the PC Engine or the TurboGrafx, it remains one of my all-time favorites from that platform. So if you've never had the chance to play it, then I submit this video to you as my recommendation. The screen captures and most reviews simply don't do this game justice. Just check it out, man. Well, that's what we have for now. Have you ever played JJ and Jeff? What do you think about this quirky TurboGrafx classic? Do you side with IGN, or are you like me, and do you regard this game as kind of a lost classic? Let us know in the comments, and thank you very much for watching.